Before the memes and endorsements, Snoop Dogg was a serious problem in hip-hop. He survived death row, outlasted trends, and kept dropping albums through every era. This is his studio catalog ranked by impact, not nostalgia. 17. From the Streets to the Suites. By 2021, Snoop Dogg was firmly in his legacy phase. From the Streets to the Suites wasn't chasing relevance or headlines. It was proof he could still rap cleanly on command. The album is lean by Snoop standards, just 10 tracks with minimal guest clutter. Production from longtime collaborators like Battle Cat and Rick Rock keeps everything grounded in familiar West Coast territory. Vocally, Snoop sounds relaxed, sharp, and fully in control. The issue isn't quality, it's consequence. The album didn't shift perception or spark conversation. It arrived smoothly, earned respectful nods, and faded just as quietly. 16. The Game is to be sold, not to be told. Released in 1998, this album captured Snoop mid-transition. Fresh off his exit from Death Row Records, he landed at No Limit, stepping into a completely different sound and business structure. Commercially, the move paid off. Creatively, it split his audience. The gritty No Limit production often clashed with Snoop's natural West Coast glide, making parts of the album feel awkward rather than experimental. Outside of Still a G Thing, few tracks left a lasting imprint. In hindsight, this project feels like recalibration. Not a collapse, but an artist finding his footing after chaos. 15. I Want to Thank Me. By 2019, Snoop had nothing left to prove. I Want to Thank Me reflected that mindset entirely. The album leaned into familiar West Coast textures, veteran producers, and themes of self-reflection. There's confidence here, but very little urgency. Snoop sounds comfortable revisiting his roots without trying to redefine them. The title summed up the project's energy perfectly. This was an artist taking inventory of a long career rather than pushing into new territory. Solid moments are scattered throughout, but the album never demands repeat listens. It exists as a victory lap, not a turning point. 14. Documentary. By 2011, Snoop Dogg was fully entrenched as a mainstream fixture, and Documentary reflected that status. The album arrived with a heavy promotional push, a massive guest list, and the sense that it was supposed to feel important. On paper, everything was in place. Big features, polished production, and cultural moments like Wet, recorded for a royal bachelor party. In execution, though, the album struggled to leave a mark. Nothing here reshaped Snoop's narrative or expanded his sound in a meaningful way. It isn't bad, it's just forgettable, which is worse in a catalog this crowded. 13. Malice in Wonderland. Malice in Wonderland landed during a period where Snoop was dropping projects with relentless consistency. That output came at a cost. The album's identity rests almost entirely on its breakout single, I Wanna Rock, a clever flip that dominated clubs and outlived the album itself. Outside of that moment, much of the project blends together, lacking a clear direction or lasting emotional weight. Snoop sounds capable throughout, but rarely inspired. The album feels like momentum rather than intention, another release that kept his name active without pushing his artistry forward. 12. Bush. In 2015, Snoop teamed up with Pharrell Williams for Bush, a tight, funk-driven project produced entirely by Pharrell and Chad Hugo. The chemistry is undeniable. The album is smooth, colorful, and immaculately polished, leaning heavily into groove over grit. Tracks like So Many Pros and California Roll showcase Snoop at his most relaxed. But that ease is also the limitation. Bush prioritizes vibe over substance, offering a pleasant listening experience without much depth or replay urgency. It's stylish and enjoyable, just not essential within Snoop's broader legacy. 11. Ego Trippin'. 8. Ego Trippin' arrived with an interesting premise. Snoop originally intended it to be a true solo album, free of guest features. That idea didn't fully stick, but the spirit remained. The album feels personal, controlled, and inward-looking. Sensual Seduction stood out as a bold pivot, with Snoop leaning into melody and auto-tune without sounding desperate or out of place. The production stays clean and understated, allowing Snoop's personality to carry the record. While it doesn't redefine him, Ego Trippin' succeeds by knowing exactly what it wants to be and staying disciplined throughout. 10th, B.O.D.R. Back on Death Row. This album carried more historical weight than creative pressure. Snoop had reclaimed Death Row Records, symbolically closing a loop that began 3 decades earlier. The album itself stays firmly in familiar territory. Veteran producers like Battle Cat appear alongside newer names, creating a blend of old and modern sensibilities. Snoop sounds steady and composed, but rarely urgent. Nothing here reinvents his sound, and no track demands classic status. Still, the album succeeds as a statement of ownership and closure. This album isn't about pushing forward. It's about standing firmly in place and claiming legacy. 9th, Never Left. By this point in his career, Snoop Dogg was leaning into legacy rather than momentum. Never Left reflected that mindset clearly. The album made a deliberate turn back toward G-Funk aesthetics, even using a 1992 era photo of Snoop for the cover. Sonically, it aimed to reconnect with longtime fans rather than chase new ones. The standout moment came with Mount Cushmore, a veteran posse cut built on reputation and chemistry. Outside of that, the project moved quietly. Snoop sounded comfortable, competent, and confident, but rarely urgent. Never Left functioned more as a nostalgic check-in than a statement, which ultimately limits its impact. 8th, Paid the Cost to Be the Boss. At the start of the 2000s, Snoop was determined to prove versatility. This album was built like a producer showcase, pulling in heavyweights across multiple styles. That gamble paid off. The Neptunes delivered defining moments, especially with Beautiful, while other tracks proved Snoop could thrive in clubs, on radio, and in crossover spaces simultaneously. This was Snoop refining his ability to make songs that traveled far beyond hip-hop's core audience. Not every experiment landed, but the ambition mattered. This album marked Snoop's full transformation into a multi-lane artist who could dominate any room he entered. 7th, Kool-Aid. Excess defined Kool-Aid. Not restraint, not focus. With more than 20 tracks, Snoop leaned heavily on his relationships, stacking the album with familiar collaborators, West Coast veterans, and trusted producers. It felt communal, celebratory, and unapologetically indulgent. The downside was cohesion. The album rarely slowed down long enough to create lasting moments, relying instead on goodwill and familiarity. Tracks like Kush Ups worked because of chemistry, not innovation. Kool-Aid succeeds as a reflection of Snoop's standing in hip-hop. Everyone wanted to be there. It just didn't need to be this long. 6th, The Dogfather. Nothing about The Dogfather existed in a vacuum. It followed Doggy Style and arrived without Dr. Dre, placing Snoop in an impossible position. The album performed well commercially, but the shadow of its predecessor loomed over every track. Production duties shifted, the sound hardened, and expectations became the enemy. Still, moments like Snoop's Upside Your Head and the cover of Vapors showed flashes of Snoop's adaptability. This wasn't a collapse, it was survival. The Dogfather proved Snoop could stay standing even when the foundation beneath him cracked. 5th, The Last Meal. Momentum finally swung back in Snoop's favor. This album sounded like an artist who had regained control after years of turbulence. The production was focused, varied, and purposeful. Dr. Dre's presence gave the project weight, while contributions from Timbaland and Superfly kept the sound elastic. Lay Low became an era-defining single, balancing menace and melody perfectly. More importantly, Snoop sounded locked in, confident without coasting, relaxed without drifting. This album felt like proof that he could still deliver a complete, satisfying album when the conditions were right. 4th, Rhythm and Gangster. This was Snoop fully mastering balance, street credibility on one side, pop dominance on the other. Without leaning on Dr. Dre, the album thrived thanks to Pharrell Williams and the Neptunes, who helped craft some of the cleanest, most durable songs of Snoop's career. Drop It Like It's Hot permanently elevated his mainstream ceiling. Yet the album wasn't hollow. Tracks like Ups and Downs showed depth and reflection beneath the polish. R&G proved Snoop could evolve without losing his identity, a rare feat at this stage of longevity. Third, the blue carpet treatment. By the mid-2000s, Snoop had nothing left to chase, which allowed the blue carpet treatment to feel confident rather than calculated. The album leaned back into street themes while flexing immense star power. The guest list read like an awards ceremony, but it never overwhelmed Snoop's presence. Singles, like I Wanna Love You, dominated radio, while deeper cuts reinforced his credibility. What stood out most was composure. Snoop wasn't reinventing himself here. He was refining. The album felt intentional, measured, and self-aware, striking a rare balance between mainstream success and artistic grounding. Second, No Limit Top Dog. This album carried the weight of doubt. After public fallout with Death Row and uncertainty about his future, Snoop needed to reassert himself. He did exactly that. No Limit Top Dog hit hard, loud, and unapologetically. Down for My Ninjas became a cultural staple, while Bitch Please reminded everyone what happened when Snoop and Dre aligned. The album wasn't subtle, but it was effective. It proved Snoop could survive industry chaos and still command attention. More than a comeback, it was a statement of resilience at a critical crossroads in his career. First, Doggy Style. Everything changed with Doggy Style. The album arrived fully formed, confident, and unmistakable. Dr. Dre's production gave the record a cinematic backbone, while Snoop's delivery felt effortless, conversational, and instantly iconic. Every element worked in harmony, from the skits to the sequencing to the ad-libs. Radio staples like Gin and Juice sat comfortably beside deeper cuts such as G's and Hustlers. The album defined West Coast rap for a generation and introduced a voice that reshaped hip-hop's sound, image, and swagger permanently. Drop your top 3 Snoop albums in the comments. If your list looks nothing like this one, even better. Like the video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.